I want to be very frank. This is the most complex and the most violent conflict in our times.
Under the cover of darkness, dozens of U.S. Tomahawk cruise missiles fired into Syria from 2 Navy warships in the Mediterranean.
Overnight, North Korea launched another ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan.
This week's mid-range missile test, a sign of Pyongyang's growing strategic prowess.
The world we live in right now seems frankly paralyzed in the face of the hell in Syria.
Has drawn in many world powers, including Iran and Russia.
With North Korea's unsettling ambitions and rhetoric rising, demand for these intelligence missions is high.
It's a constant tempo. We're very busy all the time. In the last 10 years, we've been the busiest we've ever been in this airplane.
No regional, no global power has the strength to solve it alone. We see many that have the attempt to worsen it by the day. This will only make the situation worse, not only for the Syrians, but also for the rest of the world.
But in addition to that, we're in this unique situation of environmental crisis that is astounding.
We stand at a critical point in our history. Already at the beginning of the year, we are facing the largest humanitarian crisis since the creation of the United Nations.
A famine declaration by the World Food Program is very rare, and yet it's happened here.
Now, the humanitarian crisis in South Sudan is escalating.
A growing famine and ongoing conflicts in African countries are prompting the United Nations to warn that the world is facing the biggest humanitarian crisis since the end of World War II. 20 million people in the region.
9 inches of rain sparked flash flooding in Alexandria, Louisiana, nearly shattering a 70-year record.
This heavy hailstorm in Alabama forcing everyone indoors.
This is creepy. I have never seen this in the 11 years we've lived here.
The big risk is that our generation is the last one that can address absolutely pivotal environmental threats on the planet. And we're the last ones that can do it because we're so close to dangerous thresholds that if we waste another generation, we will no longer be able to avoid a lot of calamities. And so we're the last ones on that threshold.
Peru is facing the most serious floods in the last 20 years.
The streets of Mocoa, Colombia were consumed by a wall of water late Friday night. Heavy rain triggered the overflow of 3 rivers.
The deluge was well out of the norm. Mocoa received the equivalent of 40% of its average monthly rainfall in just one night.
Severe flooding continues in Argentina and Ecuador, with both countries having experienced continuous heavy rainfall for 10 days.
Evacuate the grounds.
At the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, the severe weather caused the cancellation of Wednesday's par 3 contest for the first time ever.
And it was just devastating. I had never seen nothing like this before.
Pope Francis is welcoming Prince Charles and Camilla to a private meeting at the Vatican today. The visit is part of their 9-day tour.
So I think focusing on what they had in common, focusing on peace.
want to show you some extraordinary pictures which came to us from the Vatican.
And you can see, I'm not making this up. It comes, you might say, right out of the Pope's own mouth.
La mayor parte de los habitantes del planeta se declaran creyentes. Esto debería provocar un diálogo entre las religiones.
Within hours of Pope Benedict announcing that he was to resign, take a look at this. Lightning struck St. Peter's Basilica.
En esta multitud, en este abanico de religiones, hay una sola certeza que tenemos para todos. Todos somos hijos de Dios.
So when you ask what are we going to do about it, there really is the potential to cooperate. And how do you cooperate in a big, complicated world? Actually, it's interesting. There's no leader right now in the world. You know, there are more or less important people, President Xi Jinping or Donald Trump, of course, important, but they're not leading. There are wonderful people like my boss at the UN, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, but the UN Secretary General, he's got a unique institutional role, but he doesn't lead the world in any sense. He's not a conductor of the world orchestra. So there is no leader.
NAU professor receiving death threats after a story about an essay that she assigned her class made national headlines.
On a recent paper, she had a point deducted from her score because she used the word, brace yourselves now, mankind to describe humanity.
The term deemed sexist by the university's style guide. On the list of words to avoid, the word mankind, asking students to use the more inclusive humankind instead.
Her professor, Ann Scott, warned her that this was inappropriate gendered language, contrary to how the word has been used by almost everybody for centuries. Scott said mankind referred only to men and was therefore sexist.
Hull University is to penalize students by
On the other hand, it can lead to, I think, blur and confusion.
Language itself, which is symbolic, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's a way in which we turn feelings and ideas into communicable forms. That's fair enough. We don't want to offend anyone, but on the other hand, you can see that you're sort of sucking the juice out of language.
Just finally, if I may, a very simple question. Are we, right now, as we go about our daily lives at the start of 2017, witnessing the first days of a new world order? That dramatic statement. Is that right?
We're in the middle of really profound change, no question about it.
A Chinese engineer was so tired of his mom and friends asking him when he was going to settle down with somebody that he built and married his own robot. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So let me ask you, would you let your employer, and our employer is Rogers, but would you let your employer, let's say, implant a microchip in you? Because one office in Sweden is doing just that.
So the biggest benefit, I think, is convenience.
But now some employees are actually getting microchipped.
So, you know, you just go up, you just stand by the thing, and it works.
Wave, yep.
It was brilliant.
The story is set in the future when the lines between humans and machines are blurred.
Yeah, we've talked about this before on the show, the possibility of it.
The possibility,
And
right.
at first, I was completely against it.
Someone used it as like season tickets, right, for a European football,
yeah.
soccer.
Yes, and you just kind of wave your
you
finger.
could walk in, right.
I started thinking about how things have changed in 40 years. When I was in college, nobody would have dreamed that we were all going to be taking photographs with one of these instead of one of these.
Carrying money around, a wallet and plastic cards, yeah, it's obvious. I mean, it's the next step. The next natural step for electronics is to move into the body.
It does raise security and privacy concerns. Of course, the data generated by it lets the company know where you've been and what you've been doing.
No baristas anymore, because that'll also be robots, but they will know from your iris scan that you want a
double, triple caramel.
It also has a new virtual assistant called Bixby and an iris scanner that lets users unlock their phones by looking at them.
DNA is a valuable investigative tool. Fingerprints are a valuable investigative lead and tool. But what scares me is the FBI and the Department of Justice proactively trying to collect everybody's face. And then having a system with a network of cameras where if you go out in public, that too can be collected and then used in the wrong hands, nefarious hands, somebody in government misusing it. It does scare me. Are you aware of any other country that does this?
We are seeing them more and more, drones watching down from the sky, and with few regulations.
More like a toned-down version of what has become common in 21st century warfare, remotely controlled flying weaponry that kills.
I am not a person who will give up privacy for safety.
Not when the tool to enforce safety brings so many questions of its own.
Connecticut state legislature is considering a bill to put a lethal airborne option in the hands of police. The proposal's sudden appearance has sent a shockwave through the state capitol.
I didn't even know this bill was in existence.
The Center for Medical Progress did the American people an incredible service by surreptitiously recording Planned Parenthood selling human body parts to the highest bidder.
Is there any standard procedure for verifying signs of life?
Well, the thing is,
that doesn't go in a chart.
I mean, the key is you need to pay attention to who's in the room, right?
The release comes as its founder, David Daleiden, faces more than a dozen new felony charges in California.
The California Attorney General has charged David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt.
So instead of prosecuting Planned Parenthood for crimes against humanity, California is attempting to shoot the messenger by suggesting that these citizen journalists have no First Amendment rights. It's astounding, truly astounding.
In this clip, Dr. Taylor describes the force needed when performing a DIG, a method of abortion that involves injecting a fetus with the drug digoxin.
I have to tell you anecdotally, my biceps appreciate when the ditch works.
Really? It's in the biceps when you're doing a DNA?
It does not take me any longer to...
And killing them, it is catastrophic. This is, in the big picture, this is part of the collapse of a civil society here. It's almost unbelievable to watch. Steph, thanks.
But the initial attraction of this new religious system, Paul tells us, is basically, well, the way he phrases it is peace and safety.
Where all Syrians will be able to live in peace and security.
Paul would put it this way in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, that the message will be peace and safety. The word peace there literally means the end of war, the end of conflict. There will be harmony and unity and peace on earth and goodwill towards men. This will be the new utopian era. The word safety means there will be certainty, there will be stability, physical and economic security. These two things have powerful attractions to most people because we live in a broken, wounded, and violent world that's troubled with all sorts of ugly things. And the idea that one person can come on the scene and by almost a wave of a wand or divine caveat or just simply political muscle can make all of that ugliness go away and bring peace on earth. And most importantly, the word that Jesus used was deception and delusion.